is Ektar and welcome to episode 11 of our Digimon Tamers Review series. In this penultimate episode, we'll be taking a look at the US Digivolving Cyberdramon to Justimon Figure. Now, I really don't have much to say when it comes to Ryo and his Digimon. Yeah, he has a really cool backstory that's explored in the games, but going off his role in Tamers, he's really nothing more than a fan service character that only serves to move the plot along in one or two cases. Still, I can't help but admit that Cyberdramon is one badass looking Digimon. Pretty much all of the paint and sculpted details are there, and even though he's technically a half and half transformer with most of his alt mode on his back, unlike some of the more egregious offenders, he has his wings doing an excellent job of hiding all of that Justimon kibble. I just absolutely love the attention to detail with the molded in torn patches. Not to mention, because the arms are completely swapped out for the transformation, they remain unaffected by the kibble. Sadly, the same cannot be said about the legs, which is the only real compromised aspect of this mode. However, I really do have to admit that it's a nice touch that they gave him a forwards bend in his lower legs to emulate the digitigrade legs that he had. Surprisingly enough, the articulation is not too shabby. The head can rotate from side to side. He can even move up and down to a somewhat limited extent. The wings are all individually articulated, and they can not only hinge backwards and forwards, but also rotate at both the back and at the wing itself. However, the entire wing pack on mine disconnects really easily from the back, and the hinges at the wing root look like they've started to crack and split. I'm not sure how fragile these actually are, as there haven't been many reports of broken wings, but with this line's track record, I'd be careful. Moving on, being completely unhindered by the kibble or transformation, the arms can move forwards and backwards, they can even bend and rotate at the elbow, you can even pull the entire arm away from the body at the shoulder to take advantage of these transformation joints that consist of a ball joint and a hinge joint for added posability. The only missing joint is a forearm/wrist swivel. On the other hand, the leg articulation is just nowhere near as good. They can only move forwards and backwards on these weird diagonally cut joints. However, it still has a decent enough knee bend thanks to a rather well designed Justimon kneecap that has a forward bend to it. As previously mentioned, he does have a little bit of forwards movement on this joint. And finally, the feet have very limited ball joints that might as well be swivel joints. While not perfect, in Cyberdramon mode, it's more than enough as these joints do allow him to get that low, menacing stance that he's known for. In Justimon mode, however, that's just not gonna cut it. And speaking of Justimon mode, I think it's time for a final Matrix evolution. We first begin the transformation by straightening up the legs and collapsing these leg joints. We then pull Cyberdramon's arms away from his body and flip down his chest. Flip out Justimon's head and angle his head fins. Fold down Cyberdramon's horns. Tuck his head away. And close the chest back up. Move all four arms up and out to the sides. Disconnect the wing pack. Extend the waist, creating a track. Take the wings and rotate them all the way to the back. Collapse the waist to lock the wings in place. We then take the wing pack and peg it into Cyberdramon's chest, which is now Justimon's back. Rotate the forearm blades down. And fold his arms onto his back. We peg the top wings into the bottom ones. And finally, we collapse his arms into his body. From Batman to Kamen Rider, unlike Cyberdramon, the hero of justice sadly does not translate that well to toy form. This is mainly due to its proportions, articulation, and design. Firstly, due to being a half and half transformer, the proportions of Justimon are determined by and bound to Cyberdramon's. Here, he's much shorter, thicker, and just not as heroic as he's supposed to be. However, credit where credit is due, all of the details are once again present and accounted for. The kibble is once again mostly hidden by the wings, which have now become his scarf. While they don't look like his scarf from the show in the slightest, it's a good effort nonetheless. Sadly, thanks to how they're now pegged together, they're completely locked in place. Of course, you could always leave them unpegged to regain their original articulation. And that of course leads me to the topic of articulation. His head can still move from side to side, no problems, but as for his arms, aside from that extra ball and hinge joint that's mainly for the articulation, each of his arms only now have a single joint, a less than 90-degree elbow bend for his left arm, and a swivel joint for his right. The legs have the exact same articulation as Cyberdramon's, however, you need to rotate Cyberdramon's kneecaps out of the way in order to get that knee bend. So while the articulation is almost the same as Cyberdramon's, it's much worse because these joints are just not enough for you to get Justimon into any kind of dynamic pose characteristic of a tokusatsu hero. He can't even pull off a convincing rider kick. The one saving grace when it comes to posing potential is his axle arm, which comes as a separate swappable accessory. To exchange his arms, we simply pop one off to attach the other. While there's no way to store it in either mode, it's a great inclusion that's phenomenally sculpted and detailed. I really wish they included his critical arm as well for the complete set. Unfortunately, we'll have to end the review on a rather sour note as we have to talk about those darn head fins. Yeah, as you might have seen during the transformation sequence, they have to be bent in order to fit in Cyberdramon's torso. And that's just poor design. As this figure comes packaged in Cyberdramon mode, those fins will have warped to a ridiculous degree. If you want your Justimon to look anywhere near decent, be prepared to reshape them using hot water or a hairdryer. In fact, you're gonna have to do this every time you transform the figure back after leaving it in Cyberdramon mode for any length of time. In conclusion, while I still think it's a rather decent attempt at a transforming Cyberdramon to Justimon figure, the compromised and subpar Justimon mode prevents this figure from being a must-get. On top of that, not only does Ryo himself not get much screen time in Tamers, his role was rather insignificant and he didn't even receive a Matrix evolution scene. Even if you were a fan of Cyberdramon, the main reason I would pick this figure up would be to complete the main cast of the series. Whatever the case, this is Actar saying, see you guys in the next episode, the grand finale of our Digimon Tamers Review series.